Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing mack0652 in the 15-minute pool on ICC. Mack0652 opens with knight f3. Let's play c5 against that move. Now, you could pretty much only play c5 if you're a Sicilian player, or at least in theory, because white has the option of playing e4 and going back into a Sicilian. So he plays g3. I'm going to play b6 and set up like a counter to his fianchetto. And I might even do a double fianchetto. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do g6. I'm starting to like fianchetto options against guys who do this. Okay, now we're getting into like close Sicilian King's Indian attack territory when he pushes e4. I could play e6 and then just knight e7 if I wanted. Yeah, because if knight f6, maybe he can go e5. So I think I'm comfortable with e6. I think this is a good option. We'll see how he plays it. I bet he plays it in standard King's Indian attack style, meaning knight bd2, rook e1, h4, knight f1, knight h2, that sort of thing. We'll find out pretty fast, though. Let's go knight e7. If knight c4 trying to come into d6, I can play d5 and stop him. So then my queen would cover the d6 square. e5 would be interesting. I feel like that pawn might get just overextended, but e5 would also try to clamp down on the d6 square. I'm going to bet he plays rook e1 or maybe h4. I just have a feeling. Let's check this guy's stats. Peak rating of 1753. 18 wins, 14 losses in the 15-minute pool. 5-minute rating only 1493. So if we encounter a time pressure situation, I like my chances there. So c3, so you might try to go d4. It seems a little early for me to play d5. So I'll just castle. Stay flexible against that. I think there's a good chance I will play d5 though. Like now. Yeah, I think I like just pushing in the center. Could play more restrained with d6, but these last couple moves, c3 and queen c2, don't strike me as ambitious. So I'm happy to take over the center and just play this way. I have to apologize for my voice. I'm still getting over this cold. I feel like a broken record saying that. But one of these days, I'll be back to full strength. Recording videos doesn't help. I know that for sure. And also, I've been pretty much teaching almost as normal. I've actually had to cancel a couple lessons here and there when I felt like my voice hasn't been holding up too well. So it's a real pain when my voice starts acting up because I pretty much talk about chess all the time, especially now that I have this YouTube channel. And I love doing it, so I hope to get back to normal. He could push e5 here if he wants to close the center, but he'll be hesitant to push e5 when he doesn't have the d4 pawn already up there as support. So I think a better option for him would be to just play rook e1, free up the f1 square for the knight. Yeah, and he does play that. Because this way, he doesn't have to commit to an advance or even doing anything with the pawn yet. I want to develop my knight now. I'm just debating whether knight c6 or knight d7 is better. Leaning towards knight c6, it looks more natural. I'm also thinking about whether I can do an undermining move like c4 sometime in the near future. Like, say I develop my knight through d7, because developing the knight through d7 has the advantage that it doesn't block my light square bishop. So let's say I play knight d7, he plays knight f1. Could I play c4 there? Idea of d takes c4, d takes e4. He has knight g5, though. Yeah, might not be a legitimate try. I'll just play knight c6. We won't overthink it. If knight f1, I'd like to continue advancing on the queen side. So even though I've already played b6, I might just play b5 in the future to jumpstart my pawn storm over there. Maybe even right on the next move if knight f1. Especially now that he's done something like that. a3. Why would you play that? He's overprotecting the b4 square, but I don't think he wants to push b4 because c takes b4, a takes b4, runs into knight takes b4. I can play rook c8 or b5. Let's go rook c8 first. Now he'll definitely not want to play b4 because I can take, and I'll even be opening the c file and doing so. The only reason I kind of preferred b5 on the previous move instead of rook c8 was he can maybe make amends and play a4 to stop me from playing b5. But somehow rook c8 seems more accurate, so that's why I settled on it. Yeah, I think he should play a4 or maybe knight f1 and continue maneuvering. But knight f1, see, he's kind of trying to play it both ways. Like, he's adopted a setup where white usually goes for a kingside attack involving the knight f1 and h4, h5 push. But he's also including these moves like queen c2 and a3 and now h3. There's a lot of inconsistencies in his setup. It's almost like he's trying too hard to stay flexible and play on all the wings, all areas of the board. I think b5 will be my move here. In my mind, h3 doesn't do much of anything. It frees up the h2 square, but as far as g4 goes, there's no reason to want to monitor that square or push pawn g4. Yeah, I'll play b5. Is knight b3 at all a problem? I don't think so. Knight b3, and if I push c4, he could jump into a5 is the thing. But I could play queen b6 if he had done that. Knight b3, queen b6. So he immediately plays knight f1. I think he kind of knows that this is a standard maneuver, knight h2 to g4. But I also feel I'm way ahead in the initiative department as far as our respective pawn storms go. So moves I'm considering here are a5, the immediate b4, c4, maybe d takes c4. Probably not, though. Queen b6 also. I think I like b4 the best. It's the most direct. Part of me wants my a pawn up there too. But I think I can go ahead and do this. I might put the queen on b6, and I also might still play a5 if they don't take. So I haven't ruled out a5 entirely. Yeah, let's take here. And we'll just see if the c-file pressure becomes significant. It might. He might pay the price for having his queen on the c-file. For that reason, he could think about queen b3 in this position. Trying to pin me to my bishop. But even there's some interesting possibilities. Like, let's say queen b3, b takes c3, queen takes b7, rook b8. Does that win me a pawn? Because then I can play c takes b2 on the next move, forking his bishop and rook. Yeah, it looks like that wins me a pawn. So if queen b3, b takes c3, he might have to just play b takes c3 back. I could also play queen b3, a5. Queen b3, queen b6 could maybe be met by bishop e3. Plays bishop d2, rather passive. But understandable. You know, he recognizes that c3 is a weak square. So he's going to fortify it. So moves I'm thinking about are queen b6, d takes e4, b takes c3 simply, a5, queen b6 looks good. Something about it. Let's go ahead and play it. Connects our rooks together, adds another defender of b4, kind of eyes the f2 square as well. Also defends a7, defends the bishop. There's a lot of nice points to this move. If he takes on b4, not that he's eager to play that move, I can play knight takes b4. Then after the queen moves, let's say queen b3, I have knight c2, forking the two rooks. So that's a nice line that could crop up. He can take on d5 here. If he takes on d5, I have an interesting choice between knight takes or pawn takes. Pawn takes is not bad. Because if e takes d5, knight takes d5, I wonder if c4 is any good. Okay, he backs his queen off. Interesting. That shows he's clearly uncomfortable with the c-file pressure. And I think he wants to relieve the tension with these pawns. That's why he played that. I don't want to make it easy for him and take on c3. I'd rather give him something to think about with that. Knight a5 crossed my mind, but I see now he has bishop e3 if I do that. Maybe pawn a5. Pawn a5, he can also play bishop e3, but then I can go queen b5. Yeah, a5 seems fine. Let's do it. Continue pushing. Maybe bishop a6 becomes possible. I wish I had a rook on the b file too. My rook on f8 isn't doing much in this position. So I almost wish I had used the other rook way back here, although I think at the time I couldn't have. Yeah, rook c8 I wasn't able to play. Knight e3. So if I take on e4, I lose control over the c4 square. Is a downside. I could take once and then play bishop a6 maybe, but if I take on e4, he might throw in knight e4 immediately. Maybe. Hmm. I don't like giving him the c4 square. At the same time, I'm not thrilled about having to accept a isolated pawn if he takes on d5 and I have to take with the pawn. And I can't have it both ways, I don't think. So something has to give. Hmm. I could play a neutral move like rook fd8. And then if e takes d5, take with the knight. It's uninspiring, though. Well, let's do it. I think if take and then take with the knight, and then he takes on d5 also with his knight, rook takes d5 is okay in that position. I'm willing to play that, I suppose. Now at least I have some presence down the d file, and I put my rook that was on f8 to work. Knight e3 was a good move, though. I don't know if he was always intending to go to e3. I suspect maybe he was trying to go to h2, but yeah, this is a much better square. This is the minor piece that is giving me trouble right now, putting pressure on d5 and making me think about taking on e4 in view of knight c4, so I'm thinking twice about doing that. He does take. So if pawn takes, I think d4 is plenty decent for him. So I'm liking knight takes. And if knight c4, I can just move my queen. Okay, so moment of truth here. Do I want to play rook takes? And our discovery is a problem. Like rook takes knight d4. No, I don't think discoveries are a problem. Actually, I would kind of look forward to that. If knight d4, I want to sacrifice the exchange and then make it really interesting. So, for instance, knight d4, knight takes d4. And then if bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, and I'm going to own the light squares. He could just be in big trouble if that happens. This is a provocative square. And I'm basically saying, go ahead, do your worst with your knight. Make a discovery, see what happens. He can push his pawns in the center. Like I'm giving him options to push the d or c pawns. Probably of the two, the d pawn makes more sense. If d4, I might back the rook off. And then start about trying to siege those center pawns. Tense position and a tough call for him at this point. Yeah, bishop e3 is decent. Thinking rook d8. Or queen d8, I mean. Attacking d3. Maybe he'll go d4 now. Yeah. Yeah, he's finding some good moves. Rook d7. In preparation for maybe moving my knight. Yeah, let's do that. Also defends the bishop. Knight h2. Backtracking a little bit. Here I'm thinking knight e7. Because after a trade on b7, I'd be threatening to take on c3. Is the point. Let's do that. We'll pre-move this capture. Down a little bit on the clock. Yeah, I think knight h2 is a mistake. I don't like that move for him. It seems like a step in the wrong direction. Because where's this knight going to go? g4? Maybe, but it's not a devastating move. Moreover, I think the trade of the light square bishops is not exactly what he wants because his light square bishop is his better bishop. My dark square bishop is not the greatest piece, but comparative to his, it's a better piece. Okay, I've caught up on the clock. This is nice. I think a trade is almost inevitable. I am threatening to take on c3 now, too, because the rook has joined the attack on this square. He seems to be indecisive now. He must sense that the exchange of the light square bishops weakens his position. Maybe he's seeing the problems he has defending c3 as well. I've been in a lot of time scramble situations in recent games, like right at the end, in 15 minutes. And it seems like a lot of my opponents have froze up in the last 5 minutes. It's very possible it's just due to my rating and my title and whatnot. But you have to try to, as best you can, maintain an even keel and not freeze up in these last decisive minutes. This is far too long on this move. And after I played knight e7, I commented that he had more time. I think he had right about 5 minutes, and he's already used 3 of those minutes. 3 minutes and counting. For that to be justified, the position would have to be much more tactical and possibly even a little bit further along. Okay, this just hangs a rook. Yeah, just an outright blunder. Strange how that type of blunder can happen after thinking for 3 minutes. 3.5 minutes almost. And he resigned. Well, I would venture to say the position is a little bit worse for him, but it's not that bad. Let's take a look. Yeah, half a pawn worse. Let's go back to the beginning, though, and assess. So knight f3 and c5. Usually I play d5 against knight f3, but c5 is interesting too. I mean, I venture it on occasion. As I said, you pretty much have to be a Sicilian player in order to play this move, because if white wants, they can play e4, and now you're in an open Sicilian, or you will be if white plays d4. Not the end of the world, because I mean, I know actually some people who fake it and are not Sicilian players, but they know that the people that they're playing are also not e4 players, so they're not going to play e4. So it kind of becomes like a mutually assured destruction scenario where white doesn't want to go into a Sicilian, even if they know that black is not so comfortable in the Sicilian themselves. So he played g3, I played b6. Yeah, and I went for a double fianchetto. All these moves are normal. I'm playing my knight to e7 so as not to block my bishop's diagonal. c3. I probably would have started with rook e1 if I were him. Because c3 you may or may not want to play. I don't think it's, unless you have immediate plans to play d4, I don't think it's a pertinent move. So c3, I castled. He played queen c2. This move I do not like. I think you're committing your queen too early with that. And as you saw in the game, he only experienced problems down the c-file by having his queen there. And there's no reason to overprotect these pawns. So I think that's dubious. Queen c2. Again, I think rook e1 is the way to go. He could play d4 too, but after cd, I think I have many good options. The knight is misplaced. It should be on c3 in this position. He might have trouble moving it and getting his bishop out because that knight currently defends the pawn on e4. So queen c2, and there's just a couple minor inaccuracies for him that added up. This a3 move also, I don't know about that one. Rook c8. Let's just see what the computer prefers in this position. Actually likes queen d7. Also a flexible move. Thinks I'm slightly better. I wouldn't read too much into that eval when nothing has been exchanged yet, but black has a very coherent setup. Possibly a slightly easier setup to play than white. My counterplay, or my play in general, involving the center and the queen side is very easy, whereas his play isn't so easily forthcoming. Normally they play for h4, h5, as I alluded to, but it's harder here when he's kind of dawdled for a few moves, played moves like queen c2 and a3. So a3, rook c8. I played b5. Okay. Yeah, queen d7 is another easy way to play it. Maybe just preparing rook fd8. b5. Goes back. The computer wants to take on d5. Hard to say which way I would have captured in that case. I'm guessing probably pawn, but I would have thought about taking with the knight. Oh yeah, I mentioned the role of his a pawn. I actually thought that after rook c8, he might want to consider playing a4 to try to stall my pawn's advance. Again, I see the computer's not impressed by that, but if I were him and deciding whether to move this a pawn, I'd much rather have it be on a4 than a3. Because on a3 is kind of redundant. He already controls the b4 square with the c pawn, but with a4 he can control b5, slow me down, slow down my pawn advance. So b5, he went back to f1. b4, just getting on with the pawn push. It's interesting now that the computer prefers white. Just by a little bit. e5. I didn't think he would play this move. He didn't. Makes sense though. Shut out my dark square bishop, which is trying to attack him on c3. So bishop c3 and then queen b6 here. Yeah, now I played a5. I didn't want to take on c3 yet because I don't want to release the tension prematurely. I feel like I'm holding his c3 pawn hostage. I can take it whenever I want because he will be very reluctant to ever play c takes b4. But at the same time, I think a5 is a good move. If I play bishop a6 after that, it's nice that I'm not blocking in my pawn on a7. So he went knight e3. Yeah, here I pondered for a little bit about what the right move is. Maybe d takes e4 is the best move. I just wasn't sure about knight c4. Queen d8. Why is queen d8 so good? So if take, do I have some sort of tactical idea? Maybe. Attack this knight, and then if the knight moves, bishop d3, hitting the queen and also the e4 pawn. Okay. So I did this. He took on d5. I took with the knight. He took. I took with the rook. Yeah, bishop e3. Well, I was hoping he would get greedy and play a move like this. Because then I was ready to sacrifice the exchange. I think I was thinking of this way. And then after bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, c takes d5, just dropping my bishop back. And the reason for that would be to get ready for queen c6. And as you can see, I'm 2 points down in material, but the computer just loves black's position. Because it recognizes that it'll be hard for him to defend down the diagonal. And also, probably at least one of these pawns is a goner. So black may only be down 1 point of material, which is pretty nominal. But he wasn't tempted by those ideas, so he played bishop e3 and then queen d8. d4, knight e7. Oh, I didn't play knight e7 right away. Rook d7. Yeah, and this move I didn't like, knight h2. That seemed like a nervy move. Probably something like the computer is proposing, just move the queen. Queen a2 makes sense because that restricts my knight from moving in view of queen takes a5. Interesting that the computer still wants to do this. Oh, because I'm attacking c3, I assume. So if this, trade and then take on c3. Still about level, though. So that's probably a better option for him. Knight h2, no good. Knight e7, and yeah, defining moment of the game. He's worse, but can't spend 3 minutes and then just make a simple blunder like rook takes a5. I mean, it happens, but I mean, the more important thing is the time usage. I mean, you just can't afford to spend that long in this position. So, some major oversight. Maybe he mouse slipped. Maybe he was trying to go rook a4. I don't know. But yeah, probably like bishop takes b7, rook takes b7, queen here, defending that pawn, or the engine suggestion of rook c1, reinforcing this pawn is good. It's pretty comfortable for black to play, but take, bring the knight in. Very easy for me to play, but he should do something like that, and he should play it quickly too. Keep his bases covered. Well, a little bit of a shame that this game ended on just an outright blunder, but hopefully that middle game was interesting. And yeah, I think it kind of goes to show what can happen if in a setup like the King's Indian attack, you even delay for a couple moves and make some inconsistent moves. I mean, black takes over the initiative. It wasn't always like clearly in black's favor, but I just get the sense at no point in this opening did white ever have like a clear plan. He was kind of just reacting to what I was doing. So there was a lot of indecisiveness there. I don't know much about this player, but if I was coaching them, they seem like an improving player. I mean, I could tell they played fine. They played pretty well, actually, overall. Just that blunder at the end. But I would encourage them to adopt more main lines. I don't think it's worth playing stuff like knight f3. Anything other than e4, d4, or maybe c4, until you've really mastered the more main lines. Because knight f3 is often more of a transpositional device. Like you can get into like d-pawn openings, for instance, if you kind of know which lines to avoid, which ones you want to go for. But it's nuanced, and if I were coaching this player, I'd encourage them to study. Let's say they're a more positional player. They like slower play, kind of like they exhibited in this game. Study d4. Really master the closed and semi-closed games first. And then move on to stuff like knight f3 once you have a better grasp of that. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back tomorrow with another standard game. Please leave me any feedback in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.